And welcome back to Capital Tonight. If you are a frequent viewer of this program, you are well aware by now of the extremely serious financial difficulties that are being felt at all levels of government in New York. Today brought some more bad news. A state oversight board has seized control of the finances in Long Island's Nassau County, the richest county in the state. They have accused its executive, Ed Mangano, of being unable to balance the budget. So in short, the years of promising lower taxes and guaranteeing plush pensions have come home to roost for Nassau. And Mangano, who just last year won a surprise upset election against rising Democratic star Tom Suozzi by promising tax cuts, did not help matters. Now, it is not every day that the state takes over a local government. My next guest has some experience in this department. He is 2006 Republican gubernatorial candidate John Faso. Thank you for your time, John.
Thank you, Liz.
How serious is this in terms of, I mean, obviously it's serious for the county. Ed Mangano has lost control, essentially, of the finances of his own government. However, it doesn't happen every day, but how rare of occurrence is it? Well,
it is very rare. I mean, there have only been a handful of instances like this in the state. I served on one of those control boards back in the from 2003 to 2006 that governed the city and the school district of Buffalo.
Right.
And
still exists. It's still in existence, right?
And the Nassau situation is really I don't know if it's a precursor of what we're going to see across the state, but it certainly is not going to be the only situation where a government gets into severe financial distress.
Well, you know, and actually I was speaking not too long ago with E.J. McMahon about this possibility being floated in Washington that states will be allowed to declare bankruptcy. I mean, we're seeing a lot, and pension funds that are becoming insolvent. I mean, we're seeing this all over the place.
State bankruptcy is a bad idea.
Right,
I mean,
yes. So did E.J. said the same thing.
That really is fraught with so many unforeseen possibilities and unintended consequences. The state has it within its capacity to fix its own problems. It got into this mess. Some of the states are in really big trouble, like New York, Illinois, California, New Jersey. Other states are in difficulty, but nowhere near as difficult a circumstance. And the same is true of Nassau County versus, say, other counties in the state.
Okay, but Nassau County, I mean, Nassau County arguably would have had the capability of fixing its situation, too. A bad situation that it inherited, right? Ed Mangano, as I mentioned, ousted Tom Suozzi in 2009. It was a surprise for perhaps not everyone in Nassau County, but Tom Suozzi, people were talking about him as a statewide candidate. He ran in 2006.
He did run for governor the same year I did. Right, with the same result.
Well, actually, he ran against Elliot Spitzer in a primary and was shellacked. I think he lost a lot worse than
Well, that's true, but I'm not sure what that really gets us at this point.
Okay,
the problem is that Nassau, like so many other governments in New York State, has overpromised what it could deliver. It over the years, in the last few years in particular, because of the recession, it has had revenue declines, and this is true all across the state.
Right.
But Nassau, like Buffalo, like all the school districts, is not just in a trouble of its own making, it's in a trouble because of what Albany has done to it through the years. And the prime area where Nassau is really constricted, and indeed under the control board, they're still going to be constricted, they don't have the ability to go in and renegotiate contracts. That's what's driving the costs in Nassau County.
Right, and actually, in fact, in the latest budget that Ed Mangano, the executive, put together, he assumed he would get close to $1 million worth of concessions.
I think more than that, more than $1 million.
How much was it?
I think it was...
Oh, $61 million, pardon me, that's correct.
Left a 6 off there.
Sorry, which is a big deal, and he didn't get it from the labor unions.
What has to be done, and I noticed that they had negotiated a contract with the CSEA, which now, because of NYFA coming back in, the control board coming back over Nassau's finances, I don't think that contract will go forward. One of the things they did is they negotiated a concession from CSEA. Oh, we'll give back the half day we get each year to donate blood free, where over and above the sick time, which is very generous to public employees in the state. Well, that's a state law. New York State enacted this crazy law a couple of years ago that every unit of local government, including the state and the counties and school districts, every employee over and above what they have for regular sick time gets another half a day each year to go off and give blood.
Well, but it should be said. I mean, blood banks are always complaining about how they have shortages. So this is an idea. I mean, I get the sentiment behind the law, is all I'm saying.
It's nonsense. It's utter, complete nonsense. I mean, you have public employees who get 10, 12, 15 sick days a year, and now by state law we're going to enact another requirement that the local government, meaning the taxpayers, have to give another half a day off to go give blood.
Okay.
I mean, this is utterly ridiculous, but this is just a small little example of how Albany laws constrict and confine what local governments can do to lower their costs and modernize their operation.
Before we get down into the weeds of all sorts of things that we could talk about in terms of unfunded mandates that are much bigger, even
the weeds, though,
I know,
Liz,
are very tall. But hold on,
where
hold
the money
on.
is.
I know. Hold on, John. Hold on. Let's just, for people who don't live in Buffalo, for viewers who are not actually knowing what this means, explain what it means to be under state control. When a government loses, there's two kinds. There's a hard control board, and then there's a soft, which exists in an advisory capacity.
Soft is irrelevant for these discussions because it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
The hard control board that we had in Buffalo, the first thing we did, we froze every contract. So no one got a raise. No one got a longevity payment, meaning step increases. It also meant that the city had to come to the control board every month with to seek approval to enter into any contract more than $50,000. So it very much narrowed the capacity of the city to make their own decisions. It also said in Buffalo that they had to have, before the control period could end, it had to have a projection down the line of 3 years of balanced budgets before the state supervision could end. Now, that state supervision still exists out in Buffalo.
And actually they've tried 3 times to weaken it, and 3 times that effort has been vetoed by Spitzer and then twice by David Patterson.
I mean, and frankly, crazily, the state legislature, and I used to be a member of the state legislature, so I say this with a certain terms of endearment, but the state legislature enacted this law in the face of the obvious, which is that Buffalo still has got significant financial problems, some of which are of their own making, some of which are not of their own making, but they still have those problems. And weakening the control was something that was very ill-advised.
This has got to be embarrassing for any executive, particularly for one like Ed Mangano, who came in on a fiscally conservative message and then loses control of his own government. And what's more, do you think it would have been possible for him to say, look, voters, I know I promised you that I would cut taxes. I know I promised you these things, but I've seen the books now, which I didn't have the capability of seeing before, and it's so bad that I just can't do what I told you I would do.
I think the main tax that they got rid of was some kind of utility tax or a tax on heating oil, whatever.
Yep. $40 million worth of revenue.
But you have to understand, Liz, and I hope your listeners, your viewers understand that just because this state control board has now come in, all this means is that they have the power to freeze wages. They don't have the power to go in and renegotiate contracts. So if we really want to fix the problems of Nassau County and Buffalo and the jurisdictions, the school districts all over the state, we need to repeal the state's Triborough law. And now this, I hate to get in the weeds.
Here you are.
But
I remember talking to you about this in 06.
I proposed this in 06 when I was running for governor. This is what is driving the costs at the local level. And in fact, the governor, to his credit, has talked about a property tax cap, something which I had proposed in 06 as well. But you can't do a property tax cap successfully unless you also
just briefly explain what it means.
What this means is that Triborough says that every term and condition of an existing public contract with an employee organization continues after the contract expires.
Right.
So that means when a school district contract expires, guess what? The teachers still get raises because they have step increments.
Well, until and unless you renegotiate.
Right, but even when the contract ends, this doesn't exist in the private sector, they still get raises. So when people say, well, they haven't had a contract for 4 years, you know what? There's no incentive for the employee organization to negotiate a contract or to change work rules like these crazy half a day off for giving blood, or the situation which exists with police and fire where they have the right, the contractual right to go in and have the first call on overtime if by seniority. And so what that means is that every policeman and fireman in the state, they're smart guys, they get all their overtime
Yes.
loaded up in the last 3 years.
and then they go out
which means
for
that
pensions.
oftentimes they have pensions that are equal to or exceeding their final salary.
So what we
in
should-
fact, in Nassau County, there are over 100 police officers that get pensions over $100,000 a year.
Right, but here's the thing. So what we should say, imparting on Nassau County, is that why we should be paying attention to it, obviously not in our viewership area, is that it is there, but for the grace of God, go so many people.
It's a
correct?
canary in the municipal coal mine
Right.
of New York.
Right. And we will be following it. But I want to thank you very much for coming in, John Faso. It's good to
Thank
see
you.
you.